down, we have Sylvester Stallone. According to famous actor Sylvester Stallone, he remembers 4 of his past lives. Yes, 4. Him and his mother are super believers in reincarnation. His mother, Jacqueline, also claims to be a psychic and astrologer. In one of Stallone's past lives, he remembers being a soldier in the French Revolution. In fact, he believes he died after losing his head. According to him, he was reading about that time period. Someone was like, "Ow, the guillotine, that must hurt." And he replied with, "Oh no, it doesn't hurt. You don't feel anything, except your head hit the basket." How would he know that? So that's when he knew that he was once a victim of the guillotine. Not only that, but he believes he was actually once a boxer in his past life and was killed by a knockout punch. And he also believes that he was once a Guatemalan monkey. So, yeah, pretty crazy. In our 9th spot, we have Stevie Nicks. Fleetwood Mac singer Stevie Nicks believes that she was a monk in her past life. In a 1982 interview, she said, and I quote, "I think I spent a lot of time in old churches, like a monk. I'm very comfortable around that kind of music, with that kind of creeping around, with being very quiet." Not only that, but she also believes she was beheaded in another one of her past lives. Currently, she has difficulties holding up her head and has a weak neck. She thinks this is because in her past life, she was beheaded. In another interview, she said, and I quote, "See, I think you live on Earth a certain number of times until you finish what it is that you were meant to do here. And then you go on. I don't think I'll be back. I think I am done." So you heard it here. Stevie Nicks thinks that she won't be reincarnated again. She feels satisfied with her life. Coming in at number 8, we have Keith Urban. This one is quite funny, not gonna lie. But Keith Urban believes that he was a court jester in his past life during the Middle Ages in Germany. That's pretty much all I could find on this. It was posted on a reincarnation forum, but I wasn't actually able to find the interview where Keith himself said this. But in a way, it's fascinating. Like, he was a performer in his past life, and now he's a performer now. Pretty cool, if you ask me. In our 7th spot, we have Kate Beckinsale. During an interview on The Late Show with David Letterman to promote the movie Underworld Awakening, Kate said some pretty interesting things. In the interview, she said that for weeks she was having Vietnam flashbacks. Letterman asked, "Were you ever in Vietnam?" And she said, "I feel like I was." That's all that was said, but a webpage called the Reincarnation Forum took this literally, as if she was having visions of her past life in Vietnam. They went on to point out that the United States military actions in Vietnam lasted until 1973. Kate Beckinsale was born in 1973. So could it be that she is the reincarnation of a Vietnam casualty? Coming in at number 6, we have Steven Seagal. In the Buddhist community, Steven Seagal is believed to be the reincarnation of the 17th century translator and teacher Turan Chungdrag Dorg. According to Seagal, from the age of 7, he knew something was up. In fact, he said he has the power of astral projection. He spent some time in Japan, and while there, he learned who he was in his past life. Proclaimed Tibetan spiritual leader Penor Rinpoche said he recognized Stephen as Chungdrag Dorg. In fact, Stephen could identify all of his old possessions. But a lot of people are skeptical. They think that Stephen bribed this man to make such claims. But honestly, who really knows? We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with Patrick Swayze. When Patrick Swayze was alive, he believed that he and his wife were lovers in a past life. He truly believed that he knew her from before. Then in another interview, he revealed that he used to have reoccurring memories of being a warrior and passing away at battle. Not only that, while he was in the UK for several months, he told an interviewer, and I quote, "Oh my God, London, I love this city and feel as if I was in a past life an Englishman." So for sure, Patrick was open to the idea of reincarnation and might have been reincarnated multiple times. Moving on to number 4, we have Miley Cyrus. Now this one is a little bit on the weirder side, but Miley Cyrus said that she was Lil' Kim in a past life. Only thing is that Lil' Kim is still alive, and that's not exactly how reincarnation works. But in an interview, Miley told Billboard magazine, and I quote, "In my past life, I feel like that was me. I feel like Lil' Kim is who I am on the inside. She just makes me happy. I just love her, and I can't help that I love her." Not only that, in one of Miley's older songs, she makes several references to reincarnation. She said, and I quote, "I've got a way of knowing when something is right. I feel like I must have known you in another life, because I felt this deep connection when you looked in my eyes. Now I can't wait to see you again." The line, "I can't wait to see you again," can be interpreted as "see you again in another life." Whoever that song was about, Miley feels like she has known them from before in her past life. In our third spot, we have Lady Gaga. Lady Gaga believes that she is the reincarnation of her aunt, Joanne Germanotta, who passed away at a very young age from lupus. Lady Gaga said that she never met her aunt, but she always felt this deep connection to her. Not only that, but her family all say she looks incredibly similar to her aunt. She believes that her aunt has some unfinished business on Earth, so that's why she was reincarnated as Gaga. She told Daily Star UK, and I quote, "I believe that I had a reincarnation and believe that you can be reborn over and over again. I believe I was my father's sister, and her spirit is with me. I believe I am her reincarnation." Also, let me know in the comments below, do you believe in reincarnation? Moving on to number 2, we have John Lennon. John Lennon remembers being 2 different famous figures in society. He believes that he was Jesus Christ and Napoleon. In 1968, Lennon called a meeting with his bandmates to tell them he believed he is the reincarnation of Jesus Christ. I mean, he was high as a kite at the time, but even when he sobered up, he still felt like Jesus. In the Ballad of John and Yoko, he makes reference to Christ and crucifixion. Not only that, but in Lennon's biography, The Lives of John Lennon, author Albert Goldman said John thought he and Yoko were lovers in their past lives as well, saying he was once a pharaoh and her a queen in ancient Egypt. Not only that, but Lennon thought he was Napoleon and Yoko Josephine, Napoleon's lover. He truly believed that they were together in several different past lives. Like, how romantic is that? Seriously, that's so cute. In our number 1 spot, we have Tina Turner. In 1977, Tina Turner visited a psychic that told her that she once lived in ancient Egypt in her past life. Since then, Turner has convinced herself that she was once the pharaoh Hatshepsut from 15th century BC. Since then, she feels a deep connection to Egypt. She spends her holidays there and everything. In an interview, Tina said, and I quote, "That strange feeling of recognition became very strong when I was in Egypt at excavations and saw images of Amenhotep, a pharaoh from the 18th dynasty. Something strange happened to me. I knew that I was one of the portrayed figures, that I had lived there in that time." That's kind of cool. Like, imagine being a pharaoh in your past life, and then you're reborn and you're a freaking famous singer. That's amazing. Starting off this countdown, we have the birthday. This man is convinced that his younger brother was once on the Titanic. He says that when he was about 3 or 4 years old, he was terrified of water. So much so that he was terrified of taking a bath. When his brother asked him why he was afraid, he said, and I quote, "I was on a big ship. We hit the biggest iceberg and then it was really busy. Then I got really cold and wet and I went to a warm, bright place and waited until my next family came." Woo! Okay, that's intense. Meanwhile, his brother claims that he's super young and has never seen the Titanic or even heard about it. The strangest thing about this, the Titanic sank April 15th, 1912. His brother was born April 15th, 1992. Same day, several years later. Moving on to number 9, we have the little girl. This next woman has very vivid memories of being a little girl on the Titanic. She states that she remembers the night that it all happened. Her parents were getting dressed up in fancy clothes. She was sitting on her bed in a frilly dress waiting for them. When they get to the dining room, a man with a mustache takes her hand and kisses it and says, and I quote, "Such a pretty little girl. Someday you are going to make a man very happy." In the middle of the night, she claims that she heard 3 people talking before her mom rushed into her room and told her nurse/caretaker to put on her coat. They go out to the deck where they see people trying to get in lifeboats. She ends up on a boat with her mother, but they get back off of the boat to go find her father and the nurse. Eventually, they're stuck on the Titanic without a lifeboat, and she remembers it slowly sinking. She remembers sliding into the cold water and sinking down into it. where from there, everything just went black. In our 8th spot, we have the engagement ring. This next woman claims that when she was 12, she started getting memories of her being on the Titanic. She states that she would often be overwhelmed by a claustrophobic feeling and a rocking sensation, as if she was on a small room on a ship. Now, one day she ended up watching a history program on the Titanic. That's when she would see clips of passengers aboard the Titanic. The woman would clearly recognize them and remember their names before the film even mentioned who they were. She eventually visited a Titanic exhibition in Copenhagen. When she saw the reconstruction of some of the cabins, she immediately felt ill and she felt that same rocking sensation. Now, the freakiest part is when she saw a ring in the exhibition which supposedly belonged to an unidentified female traveler. She immediately felt a connection to that ring and knew that it was her engagement ring. Coming in at number 7, we have Charles Lightroller. This next individual remembers being Charles Herbert Lightroller, a Royal Navy officer and the most senior member of the Titanic crew to survive the tragedy. This man remembers walking down the grand staircase and seeing all the beautiful gowns. He also remembers being on the Titanic's bridge. He always felt a connection to the Titanic and he knew that he was once on it. That's when he discovered a picture of Charles and immediately felt connected to it. He knew that that was himself. What's freaky is that in June of 2001, this man met a woman at a coffee shop while he was writing a novel about the Titanic. She came to him randomly and said, "You, my dear, were on that ship. I see you as a tall, strongly built man wearing a dark jacket with brass buttons and a white cap with a black visor." She then proceeds to flip through one of his books he had, points to a photo of Charles, and says, "That's you." Okay, that is so creepy how this random woman knew. He eventually went to the Titanic exhibition in Seattle to try and bring back more memories. That's when he was flooded with them. He remembers seeing himself in a uniform and he could even hear the music playing while he saw couples dancing in the ballroom. In our 6th spot, we have Alfred Peacock. 2 years after the Titanic sank, a little boy was born. While he was growing up, he had a bunch of visions surrounding the Titanic, which led him to believe that he was on the Titanic when it sank. He claims that he remembers being a 2-year-old boy on the ship with his family, his mom and his little sister. When he got older, he began to remember more details, like staying in the 3rd-class cabin. He also recalled that his name started with the letter A and ended in ED, which led him to believe that his name might have been Alfred. Upon looking at the Titanic passenger list, he discovered that there was a boy named Alfred Peacock. Alfred was on the Titanic in the 3rd-class cabin with his mom and sister, just like the boy claimed. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the devoted wife. When a woman named Amanda was just 19 years old, she began to have memories of her being on the Titanic. She remembers that she was a 1st-class passenger named Julia, traveling with her family. While aboard the Titanic, she met a fellow whose name is either Marcus or Mark, who eventually turned out to be her husband. They both met aboard the Titanic and fell in love fast. When the Titanic was sinking, they both managed to survive by getting a lifeboat. They stayed in contact afterwards and eventually got married. In fact, she was at an antique store one day and saw an antique silver mirror and brush set, which triggered the memory of her using one while getting ready for her wedding. What I find fascinating though is that Amanda claims she hasn't had a boyfriend because she feels like no one treats her as well as her past husband did. That is so cute. Like, their love is just eternal. Like, she still loves him many lives later. In our 4th spot, we have the dreams. Back when this individual was in 3rd grade, she would have dreams of a bright room filled with fancy dressed people dancing. She remembers walking through the ballroom and seeing a grand staircase. Then she would wake up from the dream. She never thought anything of it until at school she watched a documentary on the Titanic. This documentary showed the ballroom exactly how she dreamt of it. Before this documentary, she never heard of the Titanic, let alone seen pictures of it. 20 years later, she finds that every time she has a cold shower, she starts to gasp as if she can't breathe. One time while in the shower, she closed her eyes and had a vision of her drowning in the cold waters. To this day, she occasionally has dreams or flashbacks to the time that she was aboard the ship. Coming in at number 3, we have Bess Waldo Daniels. This next individual remembers being a woman named Bess Waldo Daniels aboard the Titanic. She discovered that she was Bess when she saw a picture of Bess's husband and children and realized that they looked exactly like the individuals from her own visions. She remembers the early life as Bess, the memories from her childhood, all the way up to the day that she passed away on the Titanic. She had a husband named Hudson and 3 children, Helen, Hudsey, and Lorraine. She remembers being in their stateroom when her husband came in and told them to follow him out to the boat deck. She remembers him saying that it's not safe to take the elevator, so they had to take the stairs. She then gets in a boat with her baby while sounds of panic fill the air. In the boat, she was with complete strangers. She handed her baby to one man with curly blonde hair while she stood up to look for her husband. Then, all she remembers is that the boat rocked and she fell into the icy cold waters. In her second spot, we have Bridget O'Sullivan. A woman named Jackie is adamant that she was once a woman named Bridget O'Sullivan, who was a passenger on the Titanic. She remembers being a third-class passenger. When the Titanic was sinking, she was in a small room with something blocking the door, making her trapped inside the room. She remembers seeing the water pour in through the door. The ship tipped and a large trunk slid and hit her left hip. The room fills with water and she drowns. Turns out Bridget O'Sullivan was a real person who indeed was a passenger on the Titanic. In fact, when Jackie found a picture of Bridget, she claims that they both looked identical when they were the same age. And in our number 1 spot, we have the boy named Jamie. Now, Jamie's story was even featured on the show Ghost Inside My Child, which is a show about children who may have been reincarnated. Now, ever since Jamie was little, he had a huge fear of water, which is weird considering that his whole family loves swimming and water. He would only go as far as standing on the pool's steps, and he would freak out if he went any further in. His family also claims that he would suffer from terrible night terrors, where he would basically wake up, panicked, and would sprint around the house into each room, as if he was trapped and trying to find his way out. This would happen almost every night. Now, it doesn't stop there. One time when Jamie was learning to ride his bike, he said he remembers seeing his mom ride her blue bike. Well, apparently when his mom was little, she would ride a blue bike, but never when she was older. When his mom asked how he knew this, he said, "There are windows in heaven, Mama." Whew. There were also other unusual things about Jamie. Around the age of 4, he would say port and starboard instead of left and right. And he would also say some words with a slight English accent. One day, Jamie ended up watching the ending of the Titanic thanks to his babysitter. And this heightened everything. From there, he would constantly draw images of the ship, some containing great detail showing the different levels and all the rooms. He even knew facts about the ship that a 5-year-old possibly couldn't have known. Like how one time he drew a ship with 4 smokestacks, but he only drew smoke coming out of 3. His mom asked him why one wasn't working, and he said, "That's a dummy stack. It's just for show." And this is true. Apparently they only used 3 of the smokestacks but thought 4 looked better, so 1 was just fake. Now, Jamie also would be overcome by guilt constantly. He repeatedly would tell his mom that the tragedy shouldn't have happened, and he said, and I quote, "Mistakes were made and corners were cut." He said that the men in the boiler rooms shouldn't have been trapped. He also said that the boat should have been made out of iron instead of steel. This, among all the other facts, led his mom to believe that his son helped build the ship or was a worker aboard the ship. Starting off this countdown, we have Edward Austrain. When Edward Austrain was just 4, he started to say that he was a soldier from World War I. He kept saying that he passed away after taking a bullet to the throat. In fact, Edward would constantly get sore throats, and when this would happen, he would say his shot wound was hurting. Doctors couldn't even explain why he was constantly getting these sore throats, and in fact, he even developed a cyst in his throat at one point. After Edward started talking more about his past life, this cyst mysteriously went away on its own. He claims that he was a soldier named James that was 18 years old. One day he said he was walking along through the mud. It was cold and damp out and his rifle was heavy. He then remembers looking out and seeing trees. That's when he heard a shot come from behind. It went through someone else and hit him square in the back of the neck, and he felt his throat fill with blood. Now, there's no way a 4-year-old could have made up those details, especially since his parents claimed that they never let him watch any soldier or war-related movies or shows. So it's pretty spooky if you ask me. In our 9th spot, we have The Bad Man. And if you guys are liking this video so far, then make sure to give it a big thumbs up because it really helps us out. This next story was shared by a man named Halar. According to him, his cousin remembers his past life. In fact, he had some pretty creepy dark things to say about it. He said that he was once a man named Ghazi, but he died after some bad guy cut off his fingers one by one. Then he got run over by a jeep. After that, he was reborn into the man he is today. I mean, that's a pretty terrifying thing to remember if you ask me. In our 8th spot, we have the horseback riding accident. This story was shared by mother Veronica Alamri, whose son remembers his past life. She states that when her son was around the age of 2, he would constantly talk about being a grown man that would ride his horses through the woods. However, he said that one day he died while riding. He claims that everything went dark, and that's when he had a new mommy. Veronica asked her son where he got hurt, and all he did was point to a birthmark on his stomach. Now, rumor has it that birthmarks tell some sort of story from our past lives. In this case, it symbolized how he passed away. His mom believes that he fell off of his horse and landed on something sharp that punctured his stomach in his past life. Pretty terrifying. Moving on to number 7, we have the bad dream. This story was shared by Reddit user Squeezes That Pleases. Pretty creepy name. When he was younger, he would have this reoccurring dream about getting kidnapped while at the beach. He was playing in the sand when he was approached by 2 men that lured him away with promises of a snack and a puppy. He walked away with the man, and after that, everything went fuzzy. I should mention that in this dream, he was a little girl. So he believes that this is something that actually happened to him in his past life as a girl. In our 6th spot, we have James Layinger. James was born in 1998, and ever since he was 2, he talked about being a lieutenant that passed away when his plane was shot down. At first, his parents brushed off their son's claim, saying that he just had a wild imagination. I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't know of any kids that know the word lieutenant at that age. But anyways, eventually they were forced to believe that their son was telling the truth, because his nightmares about this plane crash got really bad. When they researched into this plane crash, they found that there was an American pilot named Lieutenant James Houston Jr., who passed away in 1945 towards the end of World War II. Now, the lieutenant story was a perfect match to the one that James was sharing. First off, what are the odds that he gets reincarnated and his parents literally pick the same name? His parents then met Lieutenant James's crew, who were old, but they confirmed the details that little James mentioned, saying that they were all accurate, and only the lieutenant and the crew could have known that. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the soldier. This story was shared by Reddit user Thorny Dame. One night she had a vivid dream about being a male soldier in a war. The dream ended when she got shot in the leg. In fact, she woke up in immense pain. Her leg was throbbing. When she pulled up her pants to see if her leg was okay, she discovered a birthmark there that she had never seen before. The birthmark was in the exact place where she had been shot in the dream. So this woman believes that she was a male soldier in her past life, who passed away while on duty. Moving on to number 4, we have the Great Aunt. Okay, buckle your seatbelts, because this one is quite crazy. So this was shared on Reddit by the user CPAZ Greyvoodle. When she was in junior high, she came downstairs one morning and shared a weird dream that she had. The dream was that she had a baby and kept it in a shoebox. She thought it was just a random crazy dream, but according to her mom, that's what her relatives did to her great aunt. I know, it's so messed up, but let me explain. So her great aunt was born in 1905 and was a premature baby. Apparently her parents kept her in a shoebox in the gas oven. The oven was not on, okay? Only the light was on. It was basically like a DIY incubator. She passed away in her 50s from cancer. But get this, over the years, this woman shared more and more similarities with her great aunt. She would go to her grandparents' house and say like, "Ooh, I like this." Turns out everything that she liked was her great aunt's. Then one time she went to a family gathering and old acquaintances of her great aunt were there. As she entered the living room, she saw this old lady and immediately had a hate on for her. She had no clue who she was or why she felt so negative about her. Well, it turns out that that woman had an affair with her great aunt's husband while she was sick of cancer. So this girl believes that she is the reincarnation of her great aunt. Coming in at number 3, we have Frozen. This next story was shared by a man named Paul V. For the longest time, Paul was certain that he knew the way he was going to pass away. And that's because he kept having reoccurring dreams where he would freeze to death. In the dreams, he saw himself laying in the snow, frozen, and then he saw his soul rise out of his body. After experiencing this dream for a number of times, he realized that it wasn't a prediction for the way that he was going to die, but it was a memory from his past life. He realized that this had already happened to him, and that's how his past life ended. Pretty spooky if you ask me. Moving on to number 2, we have Virginia Woolf. Okay, this next story fascinates me. So this woman's daughter might have been famous writer Virginia Woolf in her past life. So when she was 12, she would have dreams about being underwater and seeing faces underwater. Not only that, but one day she just started talking about Virginia Woolf, and she knew so much information about her. Well, when they looked her up, the day that she had the dream about being underwater was the anniversary of Virginia Woolf's death by drowning. Well, you know, that's freaky. Not only that, but Virginia Woolf and the daughter are prolific writers and both bisexual. So it may just be that her daughter is Virginia Woolf reincarnated. And in our number 1 spot, we have the boy from Thailand. At the age of 3, a boy named Chennai started having memories of his past life. This 3-year-old boy would remember being a teacher named Bua Kai. He talked about his previous family, wife, and children. Turns out that Bua Kai is a real person. He passed away about 5 years before Chennai was born. Now, Chennai claims that he passed away after being shot in the head walking to school. That was the exact same way Bua Kai passed away. To make matters even freakier is that Chennai has 2 birthmarks on his face, one on the back of his head and one above his left eye. Those are the exact spots where the bullet entered and exited Bua Kai's head. Like I mentioned before, birthmarks are said to be a symbol of your past life and are supposed to tell some sort of story from your past life. In this case, it symbolizes how he was killed in his past life.